Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and welcome to part 2 of our exploration of Asian horror movies released in 2017. Now as usual, we plowed through the worst movies in part 1, so the titles we're discussing tonight are a little bit better than the ones that we covered in the last video. You may still want to exercise some caution and only watch the ones that seem truly interesting to you, but there's some pretty entertaining stuff here. I think part 2 of 2017 might actually be slightly stronger than most part 2s I've done from prior years, at least in terms of entertainment value. And remember, titles for all the movies I discussed will be listed in the description box below. First film we're covering tonight is from Indonesia, and that is Danur, I Can See Ghosts. Risa is a girl who lives with her rich and busy mother, who works as a teacher. Her father, meanwhile, works overseas and only visits once every 6 months. She's an introvert due to the miserable, broken home life that she's enduring. Her mother did not celebrate her 8th birthday, thus she celebrates it herself, wishing for new friends to end her loneliness. Well, she got her wish, but it looks like they're not exactly human. Now, I read that this movie was shot in a limited period of time with a limited budget, but became one of the highest-grossing Indonesian horror films, so that's cool. The 3 little ghost kids show up early, and they seem nice enough, but they explain to the girl what happened to them in their human lives and how they died. But the mother and the landscaper quickly become concerned when the little girl tells them about her new friends. A psychiatrist, of course, shows up at one point and immediately bolts. He, gets out of there because she suspects that it's not a psychological problem. So the plot elements in this are not exactly unique, but the script does do a good enough job of making them work, even though the story's not exactly the strongest aspect of the movie. Sharifa Danish from Macabre, the Mo Brothers film, has a role as a creepy nurse, and she does contribute the most impactful horror imagery. Always nice to see her in a film. I like the visuals. The house is in the middle of a woodland area. The architecture of the interior of the house is nice. The camera work is actually quite good as well. Positioning, framing, tracking shots, etc. Very nicely directed. And the finale is very colorful, atmospheric, and interesting to watch. Sound design, I think, is one of the worst aspects in the film, unfortunately. It's cliche to the point of being annoying, uses loud noises quite often, and it makes moments that otherwise would have been better less impactful. I would rather have them do no sound at all during those scenes than to just go overboard like they did here. But I do think Danur succeeds at being passably entertaining. It's not something that's going to leave a really strong impression, in my opinion, but if you want something from Indonesia from 2017, check it out. I think there's some people out there that like this even more than I do. Danur, I Can See Ghosts. I thought I watched this on Netflix a few years ago, but it doesn't seem to be on there anymore, so it's a little bit more difficult to find, unfortunately. Alright, our next film tonight comes from Hong Kong, and it is a horror comedy. So, horror comedies can be dicey, but this one seemed to be pretty good. And that is Zombiology, and of course 2017. Our protagonists are 2 eccentric, hot-blooded young men leading a devil-may-care life. They deem themselves as heroes that can save the earth. However, one of them is enduring things in life that do not work out as planned. He has to move out from his birth home. His stepmother has chronic depression. He finds his father, who just got out of jail and is annoying to interact with, etc. In the meantime, a monster from their favorite animation appears in the city in real life for no explicable reason and begins turning people into zombies. The outbreak of this zombie crisis is followed by widespread chaos. So it's a very interesting plot synopsis for this one. Certainly some room for creativity. It takes about 30 minutes to get going in terms of plot and everything. The scriptwriters really try to kind of set up the characters and the drama. It works marginally. Some moments try to be melodramatic, but I thought they kind of fell flat. The characters are likable, though. There's not much depth to this, however, and the interaction is basic. It feels like there's some filler material in this, to be honest. There are a few little dull patches as well. The entity that is creating these zombies is shown during the opening scene, and it is very unusual. It's like nothing I've ever seen in a zombie film. It adds some uniqueness and black humor, which is always appreciated. The comedy is okay overall for the film. It works best in conjunction with the death scenes. The horror elements are pretty good, with some traditional zombie attacks mixed in with a few creative loony sequences involving the aforementioned entity that's responsible for all of this chaos. There are a few weird, nutty deaths that I definitely enjoyed, somewhat unexpected. There's also some very unusual weaponry that's used by our protagonists that adds a little bit of energy later on. I think the final half hour is fun. There's also a pretty cool animation sequence as well, which gives some story and is played during the opening credits. So, despite some pacing issues here or there and some things that don't really elevate to being great, this movie's definitely a little bit different when compared to other zombie films, so I, cautiously recommend it to you. The availability of Zombiology is that it's on Tubi and YouTube for streaming. All right, now we're actually staying in Hong Kong. We're staying in Hong Kong for the next one. And that is Vampire Cleanup Department. A comedy, horror, romance, action hybrid. This is a genre bender, folks. Tim Chung is a student in Hong Kong and was raised an orphan. His parents died when he was still a baby, leaving him with his grandmother. As a young adult, he eventually crosses paths with the Vampire Cleanup Department, a special division of the Hong Kong government that was founded before the handover in order to deal with vampire activity. He discovers that he's a human vampire half-breed. Oh no. And he also discovers that his parents were former members of the department. Our protagonist joins the department as an intern, but meets and falls in love with a cute lady vampire who appears harmless. So yeah, most reviewers on the internet have identified this as kind of a callback to the old school vampire flicks from the 80s and 90s in Hong Kong. That is a pretty accurate description, I would say, because it does retain some of the spirit of those films. The vampire girl, hops a little bit at times, which it's fun to see that callback. And a few of the actors who appeared in this also appeared in some of those older films, like Chin Soo-ho being one example. However, this one is kind of like a slower-paced film, and it focuses more on the interaction between our protagonist and the vampire girl. It is a cute and charming little movie, though, and the romantic comedy element is actually enjoyable. It actually is. It is worth watching for that alone, I would say. The cheesy romance actually held my attention, so I liked it. There's one scene that just reminded me of the Karate Kid, and when you see the movie, you know what scene it is. It's a direct homage. But don't go into this expecting a bunch of action or vampire fights. This is not on the same level as, like, the Mr. Vampire films from back in the day. In fact, this is practically family-friendly fare. It really is. There are some horror themes and elements, but they're lightly applied and more spooky than horrific. But still, I do think that there are enough of them to qualify for this Asian horror playlist. And for purposes of comparison, the 2013 Hong Kong movie Rigor Mortis had a little bit more of a horrific edge to it, so it's even less soft than that film. There is one big final fight with the evil vampire dude, and it's pretty good. Nothing exceptional, but it's pretty good. Some of the CG effects are pretty weak, but in terms of production values, there's nice use of color, and I like the set design. So, Vampire Cleanup Department, a very lightly toned film, maybe a little bit too flimsy for viewers who want a more impactful Asian horror experience, but I did enjoy this one. It's quaint. Vampire Cleanup Department is on Tubi and Amazon streaming. So we got some good availability here for some of these movies tonight. Alright, Japan makes their way into this list. In fact, the next 3 films are Japanese, of course. They're going to make an impact, right? And that is Tokyo Ghoul, a thriller horror action hybrid. Tokyo Ghoul is set in an alternate reality where ghouls individuals who can survive by eating human flesh, live among the normal humans in secret, hiding their true nature to evade pursuit from the authorities. Our main protagonist is a normal college student who, after being taken to the hospital, discovers that he underwent a surgery that transformed him into a half-ghoul after being attacked by his date. This was accomplished by transferring some of her organs into his body, and now, like normal ghouls, he must consume human flesh to survive. So this movie is based on a manga of the same name. I have seen the anime adaptation, actually, which is better than the live-action version. Surprise, surprise. But, all in all, this is actually a pretty decent adaptation, I think. This has a good series of opening scenes that get right into the horror. The script sets up the story, but it's told in an engaging way. Our protagonist is immediately attacked by a ghoul, recovers from his attack, and then exhibits ghoulish behavior within the opening 20 minutes. So that's pretty efficient storytelling early on, and it works. Unfortunately, after that point, the pacing does slow down for a while, and you can definitely feel the 2-hour runtime when all is said and done. But the conflicts that eventually emerge are pretty good. The story does have some similarities to prior vampire franchises. I mean, bells are probably ringing in your head when you're listening to that plot synopsis. You know, in terms of like the hunger or the thirst that ghouls experience to eat people for food, very similar to vampire movies. It does feel like it's treading old ground in that respect, but it does take the subject matter seriously, which is a good thing. I'm not the biggest fan of the lead actor here, Masataka Kubota, who previously played Light Yagami in the Death Note television series, the live-action series. I don't think that series is as bad as people say, but he was definitely a weak point in that show. He's actually pretty good here. You know, he's better than he was in the Death Note TV show. Then we have Yu Aoi. It has an extended cameo, which is neat. And fun fact, the lead actress, Fumika Shimizu, quit mainstream filmmaking to make a full-time commitment to her religious cult in real life, yes. And she has since been in a handful of low-budget propaganda films that are produced by that cult. You didn't see that fact coming, did you? Yeah, I remember when this movie came out, I saw the articles about her. That's kind of interesting. She's actually a pretty decent actress, too, which is kind of a shame. It would be nice to see her in more stuff, but yeah. The horror elements in Tokyo Ghoul are pretty effective. You know, there's a little bit of an edge to this film, and it seems necessary. There's blood and violence present. The humans are occasionally more vicious than the ghouls themselves, which is kind of a cliche at this point, but it still works. Some of the human characters in this you just don't like, you know? The action's pretty good. Lacks in anything really memorable. CGI is nothing great, but it's acceptable, I think. For the purposes of comparison, I think that the recent Japanese Parasite live-action films are superior to this, if you want to draw a comparison to, like, some recent live-action adaptations. But Tokyo Ghoul, it's a pretty good live-action adaptation. I think the pacing's a problem, and that limits it to a degree. But I do recommend it here. It is on Vudu and Bilibili. Alright, now the next two Japanese movies I enjoyed a bit more than Tokyo Ghoul, in my opinion, could be considered questionable. For the next two movies, I mean, we got some things to say about these, folks. And if you watch these and you don't like them, don't blame me, alright? Don't blame me. So the first one, this one I think people might actually like, this first one here. It is called Vampire Clay. After studying in Tokyo, Kaori returns to her academy to finish her prep classes for art school. Quickly outshining her jealous classmates, she soon becomes the star of the class when she discovers a bag of old mysterious clay and uses it for sculpting assignments. Things begin to get strange, however, when students' projects are destroyed and one of her classroom rivals disappears. As the students uncover that the clay is possessed by an artist who previously owned the building and died tragically in his workshop, the school finds itself attacked by a gang of murderous, bloodthirsty clay vampires. So, yeah. Vampire Clay. It's a fairly short runtime. 1 hour and 21 minutes. The opening 20 minutes are on the slow side. First time I saw this, I was a little worried. I'm I'm like, is this movie actually going to go anywhere? But there are some pretty good debates during the opening 20 minutes between the characters over whether or not Tokyo art students have just an automatic advantage over students from rural areas. It was kind of interesting. But still, I was kind of wondering, like when's the horror going to start here? There are a few little spooky moments early on with a little ominous music, but nothing really happens. But after that 20-minute introduction, the tempo picks up for a little while. We're treated to a very entertaining death scene that's surprisingly lengthy and creative in its use of the little clay monster stuff. It really does emphasize the properties and uses of clay, so you could tell they actually put a little bit of thought into this. There are some additional abilities of this clay, which I will not spoil, but let's just say stuff happens after you're attacked by it. So it's nice to see that, the filmmakers put a little bit of thought into the concept and the horrific ways in which it could be exploited. I like the practical effects in this movie. This is a low-budget movie, but the practical effects are fun. There's a nice blend of clay monster and clay-based humanoid body horror. Like I complained about the bad CGI effects in part 1 of this video, but this movie proves the opposite. It shows that going practical is way better for a low-budget movie. It's just way better. I mean, some of these effects do not look realistic at all, but it works very well aesthetically. It does. There are even a few stop-motion effects they chuck in, which is cool. So the special effects people did a pretty good job on this movie. It's good. Asuka Kurosawa has a major role in this. You'll likely recognize her from Shinya Tsukamoto's movie A Snake of June, as well as the Shion Sono movie Cold Fish. So nice to see her. Another positive thing about Vampire Clay, it does not use a wink-wink comedy. It's not... The characters are not aware of the stupidity of the concept. They're just not. I mean, the characters take the situation very seriously, and that strategy does cause some slight pacing issues at times, but it prevents the film from getting too silly. It takes itself seriously enough. So it's like, it does the really nice tightrope kind of accomplishment of riding that line and not getting too silly. The concept itself will entertain you, and let's just execute the concept. So I thought it was good. I enjoyed Vampire Clay. I think it's a legitimately entertaining B-movie. I think it is. And it's available on Amazon streaming. Alright, now our final film tonight. I mean, this film is loathed. Not a lot of people have seen this movie, but everyone hates it. I do not. So I'm going to try to mount a defense of this. And that is Innocent Curse, also known as Kodomo Tsukai, from Japan. A suburban town is shaken by a series of mysterious child disappearances and suspicious adult deaths. A rumor begins to spread on the internet that any adult who suddenly encounters a returned child who was previously abused will die mysteriously. Local newspaper reporter Shunya Izaki refuses to believe that children are killing adults and begins to investigate the truth behind the strange deaths. Who on earth is Kodomo Tsukai? And what kind of dark fate do the abducted children drag their adult victims toward? This was directed by Takashi Shimizu, big-time director. Gave us the Ju-On franchise, as well as some other oddball horror movies like Marabito and Homunculus. The star of this movie is Mugi Kadawaki, who I actually really like as an actress. She was in Love's Whirlpool, Double Life, and Hanagatami. And she helps to keep me engaged while watching this for sure. So there's some talent here. Now, Innocent Curse is one of those movies that has, like I said, has not been seen by a lot of people. It hasn't even gotten American distribution. Like, you gotta watch this in like a Region 2 Japanese DVD. But the people who have seen it really hate it. When you read any critic review, they're rating it like 1 out of 5 stars. This movie is reviled. And to be honest, it's easy to see why after you watch it. The opening scene shows the villain, alright? He has a top hat. He blows a horn to summon undead children who forcefully murder an adult. Okay. Alright, we got some potential here. And some online viewers have observed that this dude is a child whisperer who has similarities to the Pied Piper of Hamelin legend. And there is, I think, a direct reference in the film, actually. But instead of providing a legitimate homage to that legend, like the Korean film The Piper did, and that's a good quality film. Innocent Curse goes for like schlock. It goes for this really bizarre tone. And the biggest problem is the character design of this villain. Like his outfit, I'm not exaggerating. This guy's outfit looks like something you would buy at Walmart for Halloween. Like that's how bad, I am not even exaggerating. Like his outfit is just a joke. Like if he was portrayed as like a menacing villain with a really nice character design, instead of a cheesy supernatural baddie, that would have elevated this movie a full notch. It really would have. So I really, in some sense, I just don't understand Takashi Shimitsu's reasoning for allowing this costume design and character design. It almost seems like he was intentionally applying an awkward tone to the film. And this is obvious when stuffed animal cats start appearing. I mean, how the protagonists defeat this guy at the end is one of the dumbest things you'll ever see in a movie. So, Innocent Curse, it's not scary at all. It really isn't. And all of these things could be considered really bad, and they kind of are. However, it is a cheesy, nutty film that's different enough from your typical horror film to be oddly entertaining. Like, there are a few laugh-out-loud moments that I enjoyed, despite the fact that they're probably unintentionally funny. And at the same time, there are some serious themes that are present, which, again, that odd clashing of tones. I mean, you got this guy in a Walmart outfit with a fake kitty cat, like, on his belt. And I think he has, like, a little fake crow on his shoulder, a birdie. And then the next thing you know, they're drawing references to, like, abuse and stuff. Like, and they're taking it real seriously. So, it's very difficult to describe, but in some ways, this almost feels like the bad guy was a yokai monster. I almost feel like this is because if you read books on yokai monsters, they have like this weird like existence of doing really bad things sometimes, but having really oddball character designs. So I don't know if he was maybe portraying this guy in like a yokai monster vibe, and that's what's throwing it off so bad. But I enjoyed it because I kind of made that connection, and I don't know if that was intentional or not. You know what I mean? I like stories that are like spooky type stories where it's kind of cheesy. You know, you might laugh at it at times, but like bad stuff happens. You know, like yokai legends. So yeah, Innocent Curse gives me that kind of experience. So that's one of the main reasons why I like it. There are some legitimately good qualities to the film too, though. There are. The atmosphere is pretty effective. Some of the lighting and use of color is good. They use some yellow and pink hues very well. There's a fanciful circus and carnival themed alternate dimension type thing, or flashback type thing too. And they use both. And I like that. So I can kind of understand the hate for Innocent Curse. I've watched this movie like 4 times over the past like 2 or 3 years. I blind bought the Japanese Region 2 DVD without subtitles. And I actually saw the trailer. I forgot what movie I saw when I was in Japan on vacation. Occasionally I'll just watch a movie if it's raining out. And I went to the theater and they had the preview for this. And I'm like, ooh, that actually looks pretty good. And then I found it later, so I blind bought it. And it, yeah, so so that it holds my interest better than some quality movies do. I don't know what to tell you. I really don't know what to tell you. But yeah, I kind of recommend this. I don't think you could find it with subtitles. If you could find a cheap, like, used Region 2 DVD, go for that. Innocent Curse. So, yeah, that concludes part 2 of our journey through Asian horror films released in 2017. To be honest, a few of these movies I'm going to watch on a semi-regular basis. I mean, I'm going to watch Vampire Clay again, and I'm definitely going to watch Innocent Curse again. You know? And then occasionally maybe I'll dip into some of the others later. But those are the 2 that kind of stick out to me. And be sure to join me for part 3, which I will be doing next. We'll crack into a batch of films that are even better than the ones we covered tonight. And parts 3 and 4 in total kind of represent my top 15 Asian horror movies for 2017. And it's a pretty good list, actually. And remember, watch some of the older videos in this playlist as well when you get a chance. As always, folks, I'll see you next time.